It's actually the idea of natural gas buildup igniting somehow. As mentioned,
college.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to the theory behind that Bogle-Chandler case, as I mentioned a minute ago, and a couple others that we've talked about.
And this fits in with those bogs you were talking about.
Yeah, there are a ton of bogs in that area, and some scientists have speculated that there could have been a buildup. Okay, these are every number in this story is just Dr. Evil-esque, you know?
Yeah, big numbers.
It's like 100 billion. This one is 10 million tons of gas could have built up in that area over a period of time and then exploded, which, okay.
It's plausible.
But, yeah, the idea that you get all these decomposing, plants and everything, and you get this layer of methane gas down there, but it's frozen all the time, and it keeps accumulating, and then one day you have just an unseasonably warm summer, and all that ice melts and starts gassing off, and next thing you know, you got this huge, enormous, essentially fuel air mixture bomb hanging over the countryside.
And a rock falls and causes a spark.
Well,
yeah, or one animal lighting a cigarette.
Yeah, that's why they all died.
Damn squirrels.
I know. Well, it could have been ignited by actual lightning because, as you may recall, the eyewitness reports did say there was a bolt of blue light. They said it was blue light, but who knows what it could have been.
I will say, you both remember this was 2+ years ago. All those reports out of the Soviet bloc started showing up of these giant holes in the ground.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out. And one of the prevalent early theories was there must be, as Joe described, these giant pockets of gas that as things warmed up, all the gas heated up and was released, and then something ignited it to make these. Now, we've figured out since then they're pretty sure they're actually just sinkholes.
Yeah.
Because no material was ejected away. But that was the first thing I thought of after I got past my paper UFO ship idea, was that it must be just a giant gas bag that exploded.
It could be, although you'd think that it happened more often.
You would. Yeah.
And maybe it did, because there are those places in, oh Lord, what is the place? There's some lake in Europe that is known, or not Europe, in Asia, that is known for having lights at night.
The Min-Min lights?
No, but they figured out on this lake, it's in Asia. The Min-Mins are in Australia.
Sorry.
But they figured out that it's gas that is leaking and occasionally igniting, and that's why people say that this lake is on fire all the time. It's just natural gas leaking out, and something in the atmospheric conditions set it off. I don't think that's what this is, but it is very easy to say, on a grand, massive scale, that would make sense to explain what happened at Tunguska.
It would, except for the stand of trees that was unaffected. That
is the
isn't
weird
really explained. There's the second part of this theory, and that is a thing called Verneshot, which is basically an underground volcanic eruption, but from gas. I don't understand it. I can't explain it like I'm 5.
I think that's kind of the sinkhole thing that we were just talking about. It's
so
a bunch
too.
of gas underneath, and then it.
Yeah, I think so too, but I don't think it's likely because it doesn't make sense with the tree pattern, the tree fall pattern. I don't think that.
There would have been probably.
It feels worth mentioning.
Yeah, there probably would have been evidence of this sort of weird quasi-volcanic activity, don't you think?
I would, but the only thing I will say is that, it was basically earthquake, so it could have been, I don't know.
Volcano-y?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next theory.
Another theory?
Oh, volcano-y is not our final theory?
No.
Sorry, I just like that technical term that Joe tossed out there.
Volcano-y,
We've been doing a lot of technical terms in this episode.
We have.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a whole bunch of t-shirts from this episode.
It's the final theory. It is that it was a meteor or a comet or something like that. The big problem that people seem to have with this comet meteor theory is the lack of a crater, which I agree with. I think that's a problem.
That is the deal, and that's because, it's not at all unusual for a decent-sized meteor to come rocketing in and explode in the atmosphere and not ever contact the Earth. Like we had that one, was it 5 years ago in Russia? And
another one in Russia.
It was Chelyabinsk, and that one, which we all remember, never touched the surface at all. And but the problem here is like that the numbers don't quite pencil.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this thing was so big, there must have been enough mass. There's no way it could have all like evaporated in the atmosphere. Something had to have hit the ground.
So let's talk about.
I was going to say, do you want to talk about Chelyabinsk first or second?
No, let's talk about the lake first.
Okay, let's do that first then.
This lake, Lake Checo, as we mentioned, has been, I guess, suggested as
the place where it touched down.
as a possible site for a meteor, and it goes back and forth. It's either it is the crater itself, or it's hiding a big chunk of a meteor. It just happened to fall into this biggest lake and
like it sort of rocketed off to the side and ran over there and hit the lake.
Yeah, just by happenstance happens to disappear.
Right in the middle.
Basically,
That's why there is no Nessie in that lake.
Yeah,
she was cooked off.
We said that they did a ton of sampling of the silt and the lake bed that concluded that it was about 5,000 years old. So that kind of gets rid of that theory. Although that ended up being wrong about the actual time of when the lake was created, but it's been back and forth pretty much the entire time.
A lot of scientists working on this and arguing back and forth about it. I mean,
There were studies in 2008 and 2017 that say the trees surrounding the lake are much older than 100 years old.
And they should have been knocked down.
They should have been knocked down.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
And core samplings of the bedrock indicate a lake of at least 280 years old, which isn't prehistoric, but it's not 110.
Yeah.
However, studies from 2001 and 2009 indicate that the shape of the lake was consistent with an atmospheric crater of some kind. And further realized that the sediment could have easily been built up over 100 years instead of just 5,000 years or 800 or 280 years or anything like that.
And actually, the fact that it actually looks like it might have been a meteor impact doesn't mean it was this one. It could have been a previous one.
Could have been a really old one. I'll just say that general consensus at the time of this recording, because it could change it any day, is that at least the majority of this lake existed prior to this meteor hit, or whatever it was.
Yeah, because think about, let's just pretend that what we jokingly talked about in the beginning of this theory actually happened, that this chunk of, not the entire meteorite or whatever it is, a piece of it happens to just conveniently land in this big-ass lake.
That's 5 miles away from the epicenter.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, it's still going to be really, really hot and moving extremely fast, and such that it is probably going to, if it doesn't push all the water out of the lake or boil it all off, which are things that you think, well, meteors would do because they're so freaking hot. But even if it doesn't do that, it is probably going to cause so much disturbance in the water, undercurrents and impact, like cavitation almost, that the whole lake bed is going to be stirred up. All of that sediment that would be going down would probably get all mixed up, and that lake would be one very dirty, non-life supporting environment because of all of the stuff floating into it for a significant period of time.
Well,
so that would make the stuff that they try to pull not make sense, because you would think, bear with me here, if you pull core samples from 5 areas, they should be relatively similar in profile. But if the whole thing has been stirred up like a kid sticking a straw in a milkshake, then nothing's going to match from one sample to the next, and that would, A, throw your results off, and B, should be an indicator, wait, something really, really catastrophic happened in this aquatic ecosystem. So I don't think that could have happened, because there would have been so much turmoil in there.
You think it would have been obvious then?
I think it would have been obvious that nothing matched from one spot to the next, and so it shouldn't make any sense. And I would think that it would be to such a degree that it would be very obvious.
Yeah, I think that the thing I don't really like about it is that the angle of the lake is it's essentially north-northwest of the impact site.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the best estimates I've heard from the scientists is that the meteor itself came in kind of from the essentially north 150 degrees east. So essentially, that would be east-southeast, which means that if it was a fragment of this comet, meteor, whatever it was, it would have had to come in essentially from the east, like I said, east-southeast, come in, and then this other piece would have had to somehow fragment off and
90 degrees or something?
Well, not 90 degrees, but we're talking at least 45, 50 degrees.
Which is a pretty severe angle.
Make a sharp right turn to go up and hit the ground up here at this lake. So, that's one of the things I can't quite, that kind of makes me doubt the whole lake hypothesis to begin with.
I totally agree. I discount the lake pretty adamantly. The theory that most scientists seem to be a part of at this point is that a comet came down towards Earth but slowed significantly and then just blew up in midair. Apparently a stony asteroid about 30 meters wide, which is big, can produce an explosion of about 20 kilotons, which is similar to that of the Fat Man bomb.
Yeah, that was
I'm sorry.
We didn't do a good naming those.
No, I'm sorry. What is it? Randall Munroe, the guy who writes XKCD? Is that his name? I always want to say Randall Flagg, but that's the guy from The Stand. You gave me that What If book of his.
Yeah.
And I just finished it. I was laughing because he was doing some problem in the end, and it was everything is related to the size of Fat Man and Hiroshima, and
it is.
I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, it really is. Everything is.
It's just an easy way to kind of signify the amount of damage that can happen.
Yeah, because it says somebody like a truckload of dynamite. Well, so what? We want to see the kind of carnage it can create.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. By that number that we gave in the beginning, that big of an asteroid would still be about 1,000 times less powerful than the explosion.
Yeah,
but it has been downgraded a little bit, but not to that level.
No, not that far. It's been downgraded, I think, by more recent simulations down to 3 to 5 megatons.
But still,
which is still far more than 20 kilotons.
Yeah,
a lot more.
Yeah.
But they're saying that, just to put it in perspective, the Chelyabinsk meteor we're talking for 5 years ago was estimated to be about 17 to 20 meters wide and about 11,000 tons. Mm-hmm. So and that's still pretty decent size. Did not come anywhere close to producing any kind of devastation on a scale of what we saw here at Tunguska.
Yeah, and just briefly, we'll talk about that meteor in a second, but the reason that we know about the dimensions of a stony meteor and how much blast it can produce is because the United States Air Force has been actually tracking a ton of upper atmosphere explosions of this size, so they're able to kind of extrapolate out. They happen all the time in our upper atmosphere when most of these things explode.
There's so much crap floating around in our solar system. It's scary.
It is.
I'm actually surprised that at least every now and again one of our satellites isn't just smeared.
Yeah.
Because...
I think they are. We just don't know about them so much.
Maybe they don't tell us, but I mean, that could...
Why do you think your Instagram feed just went down?
Yeah, maybe that's
not
what it
because
is.
you put up those really gross photos. It's because the satellite got smashed.
Yeah.
There's an estimate just by these same people who do these models all the time that an explosion like the Tunguska one could happen about once every 300 years, so there's some precedent of it, but it's unlikely. I know Steve really wants to talk about this other incident, the 5 year ago.
The Tunguska one is... So I have the math that is recorded for Tunguska and Chelyabinsk, they seem to be calculated in a different way, and I think part of it is because we have such good visual data of the most recent one in that area. Because it all depends on the angle or trajectory of the thing through the atmosphere. Yeah. They never fall straight down. They always come in at a glancing angle. Yeah. So then they experience a lot more turbulence and friction, which then burns them up. And so, of course, Chelyabinsk, I've had it here that it was equated to a 400 to 500 kiloton explosion. Okay, well, that's because this thing appeared to have been completely and totally solid rock all the way through. and not nearly as big as what they say that the Tunguska one was.
Yeah.
But the problem, of course, is that Tunguska didn't leave any residue on the ground, any large bits and pieces.
Which led to an alternate theory of a comet.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are things that, I mean, it could be a comet or it could be, it's not always a comet, but I've read about asteroids or meteoroids that are basically a giant shell of stone and rock with a giant ice interior. So it's not so much an or a comet because it's not moving like a comet, but it's what's the snow cone thing you get at the county fair where they put the sprinkles on the outside, but it's all ice inside. It's the interstellar version of that without the waffle cone.
That's right. They call that the Tunguska.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of those. But it could be that by the time it got close enough, it finally burned through the rock layer. That when the whole thing just went boom. It did drive a whole bunch of crap into the earth. It just turned out that crap happened to be super dense ice, which then melted.
It could be
it's the old magic knife or knife blade or knife bullet theory, which you see.
And that would actually also explain that glowy stuff we were talking about
the ice
a little bit.
Yeah,
that it could have been ice crystals that got stuck in the atmosphere for a couple days, because that's how long that was going on, that glowy technical term phenomenon was.
Yeah, but the actual mystery is still there. I mean, a lot of people think this is totally solved, but it actually isn't quite. There's still some debate between the asteroid theory and the comet theory, believe it or not.
The snow cone theory?
And the reason, again, back to what I was saying, before they downgraded it from 15 to 20 megatons, and they downgraded the explosion to 3 to 5. Before, they were saying, okay, it would have to have been X mass to produce this explosion, therefore something had to have hit the planet. Now that they've downgraded it to a smaller mass, therefore a smaller explosion that happened closer than we thought, then I'm not so sure that the comet theory is as necessary as it was seen to be previously. That's where the comet theory kind of came from, is because comets are kind of dirty snowballs that have some big chunks of rock, but they're also held together by methane and frozen water, aka ice. And that would break apart, create a huge boom, but the constituent parts are small enough that they would all disintegrate before hitting the surface. But at the same time, our understanding of some of these objects, like Steve was saying, has changed. We know that asteroids, for example, aren't all the same.
Yeah.
Some of them may look like balls. We look at them up closely now, and they look like sort of clumps of rocks kind of held together just by a slight mutual attraction of gravity. And stuff like that.
Well, and the other angle, depending on the exact angle that it came in, when this thing exploded, it could have launched all of the rocky material forward in this kind of projection up and away and sent it hundreds of miles out before those bits came crashing down, which would be outside of the blast zone. So then nobody's looking there because, well, all the flattened trees are here, so let's look in here for the bits. And they've actually been thrown away, kind of like you see it with volcanoes. Sometimes you'll see those weird smoky balls that'll just go and it's just the random weird ones that get thrown way out. That same phenomena can happen, and it just depends on what the material is.
It's a big old mystery still, though.
Yeah, it is. It's a celestial object of some sort.
I would agree.
UFO, comet, asteroid, or something else.
Paper UFOs.
Yeah, but most likely a meteor. But maybe a comet. I mean, there's no.
It could also a fragment of a comet.
Or a fragment, a piece of a comet too. I mean, our understanding of comets has been changing too.
It has.
We used to think they were just all big snowballs, but they could be all kinds of different things. They don't have to be one thing or the other. So I could see a comet with a big old chunk of rock right at the core of it. That would be big enough to make a big boom.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other things you want to add to this?
Let me think. We talked about Chuppy last week, so not this week.
Yeah.
Okay. UFO, we did that whole thing.
I've got nothing, but if I think of it, I'll interrupt you in what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you know what I'm going to do
same here.
next is just say, it was clearly Da Vinci.
Yeah, it's clearly Da Vinci. Yeah.
And that's all I
With-
have to say.
With, I like Da Vinci with Chuppy behind him with a knife to Da Vinci's throat, that kind of thing.
Take me back to our home world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take me back to the 20th century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for this episode then.
Yeah, we figured that one out.
Yeah.
Take
Thank
that,
goodness.
scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're better than you are. Ha.
Uh-huh.
That's not true. It's not even close
Not
to
even
true.
close.
Yeah. If you are listening to this episode, you know where you're listening to us at. It could be Stitcher Premium. It could be